Hello everyone, and welcome to Experiential Game Reviews. Today, we'll be discussing Suikoden Tactics. Suikoden Tactics was developed by Konami and released in late 2005. This is a strategy RPG, and it was likely Konami's response to the wildly popular Final Fantasy Tactics. An important part of any RPG is the game's story. The story of Suikoden Tactics is not the game's finest point, however it is still interesting and engaging. The game's characters are unique enough, and most are likable in their own way. However, there are many secondary characters, some of which are uninteresting. The events taking place in Suikoden Tactics continue the story from Suikoden 4, which should be interesting to fans of the series. In fact, this is not the only way in which these two games can interact. In fact, before continuing this review of Suikoden Tactics, it is necessary to mention Suikoden 4, at least briefly. Loading a save file from Suikoden 4 with all 108 characters into Suikoden Tactics will allow the player to use the main protagonist from Suikoden 4 in Suikoden Tactics. This is a generous reward since Hero 4 is essentially the best character in the entire game, rivaled only in strength by a character players can unlock by beating the game. However, the only thing about Suikoden 4 is the graphics are awful, the pacing is bad, and the first 10 hours of the game are horrendously slow. Your party must travel everywhere on a boat which crosses the ocean at the pace of a snail, and unless you somehow know where you're going already, you will spend most of your time wandering around aimlessly, fighting random battles every 10 seconds. But if you can overlook all of that, Suikoden 4 really isn't that bad. Now let's continue with the review. Like any good strategy RPG, Suikoden Tactics allows the player to equip a variety of items which provide an advantage in combat. The unique thing about Suikoden Tactics is that it provides the player with 8 miscellaneous equipment slots, into which anything from items to accessories can be placed. This provides lots of leeway for strategy. The skill system returns from Suikoden 3 and makes a great addition to Suikoden Tactics. Each character can be equipped with a variety of skills, all which provide different benefits. These skills range in terms of effectiveness, from useful skills such as Battle Lust, which provides your character with extra attacks, to Jump, which is essentially useless. Skills can be leveled up from rank E to S. These levels will carry over into a New Game Plus, allowing you to start the game with all S-level skills. In addition to the equipment and skills systems, each character may also equip a variety of runes. These may provide the ability to cast spells, use special attacks, or give other bonuses such as increasing speed. In Suikoden Tactics, each character is limited to only one weapon. However, this weapon may be upgraded in level. Under normal circumstances, a player will be able to achieve level 7 weapons just before the end of the game. However, if you know what you're doing, you can get the legendary hammer from the Ruins of Obel and achieve level 8 weapons relatively early on in the game's story. Now, let's discuss the combat system of Suikoden Tactics, which is probably the game's strongest point, although it isn't without its flaws. As a turn-based strategy RPG, units must be moved one at a time, which can get rather tedious after a while. The gameplay can also be relatively slow-paced at times. Despite this, it can be very rewarding to see your strategies play out over time, and the AI does a decent job of keeping things interesting. I'll explain some of the details with game footage. The area that I'll be showing in this review is the Ruins of Obel. It's a 6th floor optional dungeon that's accessible early on in the game's story. This area is unique because enemies here will scale with the player's level, whereas enemies in most areas are of set level. Before I get into the details of the combat system, I'll explain a little bit about the controls and camera. The camera can be panned from left to right in about a 45-degree arc, as well as up and down. There are 3 levels of zoom, which is the source of one of my points of contention. None of the zoom levels really seem ideal. The close-up view is too close to tell what's going on in the battle, and the long-range view sacrifices a lot of detail. The mid-range view is a decent compromise, but it looks strange until you get used to it. The graphics themselves are not that spectacular, although they do get the job done. It's similar in art style to Suikoden 3, although honestly that game looks more polished. Despite this, Suikoden Tactics makes up for its faults with amazing gameplay. One unique aspect of the combat system are cooperative attacks. When two or more compatible characters are next to each other, they can release a powerful double or even triple attack. These attacks are awesome, but limited and take luck or planning to pull off. Notice the green terrain left behind by that attack. Various spells and abilities can place an elemental zone on the map which will affect combat. These are either earth, wind, fire, lightning, or water and are indicated by their respective colors. Each character also has an elemental affinity which determines how these zones will affect them. Characters of the same element will have their stats increased and be healed each round. Characters of the opposing element will be damaged and have their stats decrease. A number of other game mechanics are also present, such as this one, where one character can protect another from an attack, reducing the damage dealt. The original target still gets a chance to counterattack if applicable. There are some frustrating aspects of the game which could have been streamlined, such as this. If enemies are far enough away from your party, they will never take any action. However, the game will still pause on them momentarily when they get a turn. This can be annoying and seems unnecessary when this pause could have been skipped to maintain the flow of battle. In all fairness, however, this is common to many strategy RPGs. And continuing with this theme, another slightly irritating thing about this game are these things: fly lizards. They will put members of your party to sleep, and there's little to no way to prevent this. An accessory can be stolen from the final boss, which provides immunity to status effects. However, this is little help in the first playthrough when this will be most annoying. My other gripe with this game is that some of your characters can permanently die, meaning you will lose the ability to use them for the rest of the game. When a character's HP is reduced to 0, they have a chance to either withdraw or die permanently, depending on their luck stat. Story characters, such as Mizuki, will automatically withdraw and cannot die permanently. Unfortunately, non-story characters, like Snow, do not have this same benefit. The developers probably intended for this to add realism and difficulty, but this feature is ultimately limiting. Because of this, I recommend sticking primarily to story characters for your first playthrough. This will prevent frustration and possible resets. Otherwise, your characters may meet the same fate as Snow. The game's main story takes about 30 to 40 hours to complete, depending on how much time you spend doing side quests, leveling up with monster hunts, or hunting for gear in the ruins of Obel. However, the game's New Game Plus feature has an interesting mechanic rewarding players for multiple runs. After defeating a level, a screen will pop up displaying the player's rank. This can be anywhere from C to S. S ranking a level will often result in extremely good, unique rewards. This is dependent upon multiple factors, including average damage dealt and received, so it's way easier to S rank levels in New Game Plus. Although it's not perfect, Suikoden Tactics is quite fun for what it is. Fans of this series, or tactics RPGs in general, should definitely give it a try. For everyone else though, it may not be worth the effort to acquire the game. And honestly, Final Fantasy Tactics is probably better simply because it has more content. Despite this, Suikoden Tactics still is a unique experience. It's a great game if you're in the mood to just relax and kick back, or if you're playing it while doing something else, since the game will not continue without your input. After you've put enough hours into it, it's still fun to go back and play a few battles every now and then. Have fun playing the game if you do, or don't if you don't.